It is that time of year again, everyone, where we are wrapping up the year with our best and worst books of the year videos. Hello everyone, welcome back to my vlog channel. Today we're specifically going to be talking about my top 10 best books of 2023. So these books don't necessarily have to be published within the year 2023. Some of them are, some of them aren't. They are just books that I read and I personally discovered sometime this year. This year I tried to rank them in order from 1 to 10 as best as I could, but I love all of these books so much. These are the creme de la creme. You need to read all of these, okay? If you want to see me shit on some books that were absolutely trash, garbage, awful, then check out my 10 worst books of the year video. Before we jump into my top 10, I do want to give some honorable mentions to Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid, to Any Duchess Will Do by Tessa Dare, and to Heartless by Elsie Silver. Okay, now, let's get into my top 10. I initially was gonna start from 10 to 1, but I think I'm actually gonna just start with my favorite. And I decided to do that because my sweatshirt kind of gives it away. My favorite reads of 2023 tied for first and second place. Probably not a shock to anyone. Happy Place and Book Lovers by Emily Henry. These are hands down my favorite books of the year when I look back and I think of what books I had the best experience with, what books touched me the most and impacted me, what characters I felt connected to. Emily Henry is just one of my favorite authors of all time. I will read anything that she writes. And when I sat down and I was thinking between these two books, I could not decide. For the rest of the books, I promised I decided to only pick one from one author or one series. I had to give these my first and second place spots because I love them both so much for different reasons. I did read Book Lovers first, so let's talk about this one first. This is about Nora and Charlie, who are both co-workers in the publishing industry. They've crossed paths a few times, but they never really got along much. And they both are from New York City, but during one summer, Nora's sister invites her to come to this small town and have this like small town little escape moment. And who ends up showing up there because his family lives there? Charlie. So it's kind of like a city people thrown into a small town kind of romance. Honestly, after reading this, I was convinced that Emily Henry somehow crept into my subconscious at night while I was sleeping and wrote this book for me and me alone. This book is for the hardworking, materialistic, book-loving oldest sisters, for the women who are attracted to smart, vampire-like, earth sign coded men, because Charlie is my type to a T, and for the people who know what they want in life but are afraid to leave people behind while they chase their dreams. Oh my god, this book it did everything that it needed to do, and I love the romance so much. I think about them all the time. Definitely my favorite Emily Henry couple, my favorite Emily Henry love interest. So then when Happy Place released this summer, I pre-ordered it, I got a signed copy, and I was so excited. But I never thought that it would come close to Book Lovers. This book felt like a therapy session in the best sort of way. I laughed, I cried, I felt anxious, I felt soothed. It just took me on such a roller coaster of emotions. Do not let the cover and the title fool you, okay? There are happy moments, but there are sad moments. This book, there's a lot. I personally think that Emily Henry's writing just gets better and better, and so this is Emily Henry at her best. Like the writing, the quotes, the lines, oh my god. I'm so sad because I read this on my Kindle because the day it came out, I was flying on a plane, and I highlighted and did all my annotations on my Kindle, and I was gonna transfer them to my physical copy, but by the time I landed, I realized I forgot to put my Kindle on airplane mode and none of my annotations saved. So that's okay, it's just an excuse. One day I will reread this and fully annotate it, but the writing in here is phenomenal. I also think that the found family / navigating adult friendship sort of aspects that Emily Henry was exploring here really worked for me personally. I found them very relatable. I think that this book examined relationships of all kinds, familial, platonic, romantic, and I loved the way that it looked at the constant changes we go through as we become adults. And honestly, like, I was just not expecting it. I was not ready for it, but I felt like I needed it. It really healed something in me. I'm thankful for this book. I loved it. So yes, in terms of romance and characters, I think Book Lovers is her best, but in terms of plot, storyline, and writing, I think Happy Place is the best. So I just had to include them as my top 2 reads of the year. My third favorite book of this year has to go to Reckless by Miss Elsie Silver. I read this entire series. This is the Chestnut Spring series. It's a 5-book small town Canadian cowboy romance series. And boy, did I not think I would love Canadian cowboys as much as I do. But ye fucking ha. Save a horse, ride a cowboy. I'm all about that, especially Mr. Theo Silva, this cowboy. I also loved Heartless. They were definitely my top 2, but Reckless is just my favorite in the series. I loved this book. I was actually just gagged, shocked, galled, gooped, just so surprised that I ended up giving a one-night stand turn surprise baby book a 5-star. But I did. Elsie Silver just has the ability to take any romance trope that I think I don't like, and she can make it work for me. I don't know, there's magic in it, but this is definitely my favorite book in the series, even though they are all good, and I recommend you read them all. But there's just something special about Theo Silva. It's just more evidence that Virgo men are superior. I will die on that hill. My boyfriend's a Virgo, Theo is a Virgo, and acts of service. That's all I'm gonna say. I think there's also something to be said about watching a sort of unlikable, mean character like Winter. Watching her be adored and doted on by Theo is just, there's something I love about that. I just feel like that's not a trope that's done enough in romance, like the reverse grumpy sunshine. It's so good. And I just think we need more unlikable women in romance. Like, Winter is a little bit mean, she's grumpy, she gets overstimulated and mad, and I related so much to her. And yeah, I just love this book. It was fabulous. Next, we have another romance. Are we shocked? No. You shouldn't be. It's my favorite genre for a reason. This is my 4th favorite book of the year, Out on a Limb by Hannah Bonham Young. Oh my god, every time I think of this book, I get butterflies. I just get this like warm, cozy little feeling deep inside. And again, with the surprise pregnancy trope. Like, this is a one-night stand pregnancy trope book, and that's not something I go for. I still fucking ate this up, gobbled it, no crumbs left. These 2 characters are just totally and completely in love with each other. Like, Bo and Win are meant to be. They genuinely made me believe in soulmates for the first time. Like, I don't even like Feyre, Rhysand, like fated mates bullshit. Like, that's not it. Like, this is soulmates. They are soulmates. Right here. This is just another book that I could read over and over and over again, so obviously it's high up on the list if you haven't read this yet. What are you doing? Come on. And my last romance on my list, all of my top 5 are romances. How funny is that? We have to, of course, include, I feel like all the romance girlies are going to be talking about, The Right Move by Liz Tomford. Not only is Indy one of my favorite heroines of all time, but Ryan Shea is the perfect book boyfriend, okay? If you want to read a book about a man that is literally perfect and has no flaws, and just this is like the ultimate fantasy, it's Ryan Shea. It's Ryan Shea. This is grumpy sunshine excellence, and again, not my favorite trope. I usually prefer reverse grumpy sunshine, but Liz Tomford just executed it so well. This is a chunky romance book. It is over 400 pages, but I think Liz Tomford is one of the only romance authors that can utilize the long books. Like, half of these authors need to cut a good 100 pages out of half of their books, but Liz Tomford, I gobbled up every page because they're just that good. Also, we need more NBA basketball sports romances. Like, I really hope in the next few years more of these start coming out, because I just feel like we get so many hockey ones. This was a nice refresher. I'm a basketball girl, so it really worked for me. He buys her an entire fucking house. What more could you ask for? Everyone loves this book. I don't think I've seen a single bad review of this book, for good reason. All right, my 6th top read of 2023 is definitely my favorite thriller of the year. This is Bright Young Women by Jessica Knoll. This is my first book by this author, but after reading this, I read a few of her other books, and this is still number 1. This is that girl. This came out this year. I just think the way that Jessica Knoll blended storytelling with true crime was masterfully done in this book, and I had absolutely no idea that this was going to be referencing a real true crime case when I went into it, but at about chapter 2, that becomes very, very obvious. And then from then on, I was kind of just like amazed at how she told this story through the lens of the women, how she used the subject material, how respectful of the victims that she was. I think this was gorgeous, and I annotated the fuck out of it. Obviously, because I knew about the case and how it ends up when I realized who this book was referencing, I knew how it was going to end. There's not really like, you know, any big plot twists like your typical thriller, but I think that's just also what made me really appreciate it, because it took a risk. It did something very different that I hadn't seen done in other mystery thrillers, and it did it so well. I love feminist literature, baby. Give it to me. Give it to me. So, and now moving forward, anytime anyone mentions Ted Bundy's low IQ'd, thin-lipped, ugly-ass self, I will just direct them to read this book because I think it is great. The next book I still need to get a physical copy for, but my 7th favorite read of 2023 has to go to I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jeanette McCurdy. I know, this came out last year. I am a little late to the party. I listened to the audiobook back in January. The audiobook is great, by the way, highly recommend it. She narrates it herself. And ever since reading it at the beginning of the year, it has stuck with me ever since. It's definitely the most impactful celebrity memoir that I've ever read. I mean, Jeanette is just such a great writer, and her voice is really evident throughout the story. And yeah, I just hope that she writes more in the future and comes out with more books. But believe the hype, okay? If you're even slightly interested in this and you haven't picked it up yet, do it. I love a good memoir. What can I say? And this is definitely the best one I read this year. My 8th favorite book that I read in 2023 is The House on the Cerulean Sea. That rhymed, and I didn't even mean to. This is by TJ Klune. And again, I'm a little late to the party with this one. I don't really read many books written by men, but I would happily read more by TJ Klune after reading this, because these characters were just so vivid and real, even in this cute, complete fantasy setting. This entire book just felt like a Pixar movie. I so badly want to see this be animated on screen. Like, I think this would make a fantastic Pixar film. This is basically about a guy named Linus who is a social worker, and he is sent to this house in the Cerulean Sea, which serves as an orphanage for magical children. And that's pretty much all you need to know. It's basically a big gay hug. Definitely a book I would reread again. And I feel like for me, that's how I know if I really loved a book, because I'm not a big rereader. I think I reread 2 books all this year. So, second to last fave, number 9, I've got to give it to Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. I feel like you're going to see this in a lot of people's best books videos this year. It came out this year, and fuck, it's just a great book. Like, it is just a great book. This was gripping from start to finish. Every page, I could not put it down. And the first chapter of the book alone is my favorite introduction that I read all year. It just sets up the story so well. I love the way R.F. Kuang integrates her own opinions throughout the book as well on the publishing industry, racism, plagiarism, cancel culture, but it's all through the lens of Juniper, who is our very unlikable, unreliable, white narrator, and she steals a Chinese woman's novel and passes it off as her own. You're following a really, really bad character, and as you're reading it, you're like cringing at everything she's doing, but you can't, it's like watching a car crash, you know? It's like you can't help but keep looking, even though you know you shouldn't. It hurts to read, but in a good way. I don't know. I love when books can make me feel something, and this made me feel a lot of things. I don't typically love books that center around chronically online characters and books that discuss like Twitter discourse, pop culture references. I feel like when they get super, super contemporary like that, sometimes it can take me out of the story, but Yellowface soars in this regard, and every reference that R.F. Kuang makes is spot on and hilarious, and I just always think about how fucked up this main character was all the time. Like, one of the most memorable main characters ever. And yeah, it was wild.
What's going on?
Just talking about my 10th and final best book of the year. Last but certainly not least, my 10th favorite book that I read in 2023 is The Stolen Heir by Holly Black. This might be an unpopular opinion. I think that people didn't really like this book for various reasons. Maybe because they expected more Jude and Carden. I'm not sure. But I just know that this got kind of low reviews. But I think that when the second installment, Prisoner's Throne, comes out in 2024, y'all are gonna be sorry for doubting her. Okay, because I loved The Stolen Heir. I am a stan of the original Folk of the Air trilogy, as you can probably tell. This is a spin-off of that series following Oak and Ren. I was a little bit skeptical that maybe I wouldn't connect with them as much, but honestly, I was dead wrong. Oak and Ren are such good characters. I loved their childhood friends to enemies to reluctant allies dynamic so much throughout this book. And I also normally don't like books where you're following two characters going on a long journey together. That's basically all that's happening in this book. But again, their dynamic was so fun that I just had the best time. I read it in one sitting, start to finish, the day it came out. This is only at the bottom of the list because I did guess the big plot twist very early on in the book. And I think a few other people said the same thing, that like this didn't have as cool of a plot twist the way that some of the other books do. Either way, I had an amazing time. And I think this book did a fabulous job at setting up the next book in the series and prepping us for a lot of political intrigue and a lot of drama. And like, if this is good, like I think The Prisoner's Throne is gonna knock my fucking socks off. At least I hope. I gave it like a 4.75. I think this is the only one on the list that's like wasn't a full 5-star, but I love Holly Black. She can do no wrong, okay? All right, those are my top 10 best reads of 2023. Those are my favorite books that I discovered this year. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please do like, subscribe, all that fun YouTube stuff, and make sure to comment below and let me know some of your best reads. You can give me your full top 10 list. I would love to read them so I can add some of your favorite books to my TBR for 2024. What should I read that I haven't read already? Let me know. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye!